Welcome to Crossfire. Well, it's gonna happen. We're gonna go at it with Harry. And this actually has been planned for a while now, but this is going to be a debate, a true, honest debate between me and Harry about topics that are top of the list of the driver community. And it's a simple debate. I don't think I couldn't actually debate this with a better person. And I am really thrilled to do this, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So we're going to debate about certain topics that are near and dear to my heart, and we'll see where it goes. And you guys will make up the decision by how many of you watch and how many of you comment. And please let us know
I
with
guess
your
we'll have
input.
them pick a winner in the comments too for each
Yeah,
topic.
that will yeah. And also, email me, Sergio at the rideshareguy.com if you have topics that you would like us to debate about. Because, I
We've
mean, we're
got
not short
a
of ideas.
we've got a link if people want to submit topic ideas. We've got a Google form that we'll put in the description, and they can submit a topic for future debate. I mean, I think we'll be able to cover the hot ones, and I think we know what people are talking about. But I think the reason why I want to do this show with you, Sergio, is because I think a lot of times, if you look at Uber and Lyft, what they're saying, it's like, the grass is always green. We're amazing, we're the best, and then you have some drivers who are like, Uber's the most evil company in the world, even though there's 6.5 million people driving for Uber. So
Yeah.
I don't think that point of view is correct either. So probably somewhere in the middle. So we're going to find some good topics to debate. And, enough with the intro. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. All right. So our first topic is, should Lyft penalize or even time out drivers for canceling too many trips? Not only that, but send them threatening emails saying that if you continue doing this, we may deactivate you. As an independent contractor, that's hocus pocus to me. I've actually been the target of that about a year and a half ago. In fact, I even wrote an article, and it was probably one of our most popular articles that I ended up going to cancellation rehab school, Harry. And not only that, I was forced to watch videos for about 30 minutes why canceling is not good for the community. But I had to do 10 trips without canceling one after that. Now, if that's not treating me like an employee, I don't know what is. And
Well, let
in
me
this
ask
case,
you this. Let me
yeah, but
ask you
hold on. In
this.
this
All right.
case,
You're
we
going to
have a
read it as
Utah driver. This is not
all
about
right.
me. We'll have a Utah driver who sent me an email, and we put it on Show Me the Money Club.
Hmm.
And he canceled, according to Lyft, way too many times. And Lyft surely sent him the threatening email and on a clock, put him on a timeout for 30 minutes. I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's fair.
All right. So, I mean, we'll put the screenshot on the screen, but he says, I've got 300 rides, 5-star rating. So, not a ton of rides, only 300. So, he's newer.
Mhm.
Cancellation rate is 6%, seems reasonable. He's also done 1,800 rides with Uber in the past year, but I guess 300 on Lyft. And he says it was snowing, took 4 times as long to get anywhere. He canceled 1 or 2 rides for safety reasons because of the conditions on the road. Seems reasonable so far. And then he said Lyft suspended him for 30 minutes. Now, I guess what I'm going to argue is I don't buy the story. I don't think that he canceled 1 or 2 rides and then Lyft, put him in timeout for 30 minutes. That seems like, on a blizzard with blizzardy conditions, right? Like every driver is probably canceling 1 or 2 rides. You think Lyft is, putting every single driver on that night out in Utah in timeout for 30 minutes? That doesn't make any sense, right? Like I think that he was canceling a lot more than 1 or 2 rides. He sent this email to you, but he didn't provide any evidence, right? He didn't say like, okay, here, here's like my last month of trips and you can see all my cancellations, right? So we're sort of taking his word. So I think that is like my first bone to pick with the
Well,
story.
yeah, I get that, but as you correctly stated, he only did 300 trips on the Lyft platform, right? To get to a five, okay, by the way, Harry, the threshold on the Lyft app is if you do go over 5%, you will automatically get this email, automatically.
Hmm.
And it doesn't even matter why you're canceling, which according to their terms of service, you can cancel and it will not count towards your cancellation rate for many reasons, such as unaccompanied minor, such as child without a car seat, such as I don't feel safe, which was my case because I
Right.
was
But how
dealing with
many
a,
drivers do you think abuse that? Right. So I think right. If
I
I'm
don't
a
know.
driver and Well, I mean, you know that there's bad drivers out there, right? So that's sort of to
Yeah,
me, it's
there's
like, I bet this is a situation where, like, that's sort of why I'm always like, the bad drivers kind of ruin it for the good drivers, right? Because
okay.
I guarantee, have you ever called an Uber or Lyft ride? Driver isn't coming to you. You have to cancel, right? Then Lyft charges you a $3 or $5 or $7 cancellation fee. And for passengers, Lyft's cancellation fees are actually very aggressive. If you ever cancel as a passenger on
It's
Lyft,
six and
they
a
will
half
not
dollars.
refund it. They will not give you that money back. With Uber, you can just kind of contest it and they'll give you the money back or credit. But Lyfts are much more aggressive. So I think that, there's definitely some drivers who are abusing that
Yeah.
system, right? And so I think if you're a good driver, right, you kind of have to understand, right? Like Lyft is not going to go out and like they don't want to put drivers in timeouts. They don't want to deactivate drivers for cancellations, right? So what they're looking at is, okay, the baseline cancellation rate in any day, in any week, in any month, let's say it's 5%, right? So drivers
Mhm.
who are going over 5%, maybe that's 5 or 10% of drivers, they're going to put you in timeout. They might deactivate you for that, right? Because it's a pretty shitty experience for the customer. You call a ride to go to the airport, driver's on the way, he cancels, you don't see it until five,
Yeah,
ten
but
minutes later.
no,
Then you have to recall a ride, right? So it's like in that
this is not
scenario,
the
I'd be
case.
fucking pissed.
I get that. I get the consumer point of the view, but I don't think this is the case, right? So I understand there are bad apples. I understand they play games. They go, to the corner, wait for the passenger for a couple of minutes, cancel to collect the cancellation fee. Those people definitely do ruin it for the rest of the drivers. But in this gentleman's case, he's going like, I can't get to the passenger. It's snowing out here, right?
Okay.
And his point was not that he's canceling right and left. It was that if I can't get to the passenger, this happens quite a bit in events. This happened quite a bit,
Yep.
in stadium pickups, a lot of
Yep.
times, right? And sometimes it's just not worth for me to do it. And the only thing I can do is cancel. However, when I do choose one of these points, by the way, I was, and this gentleman was acting exactly what the terms of service asks a driver to do. That's why we have the choices, why we're canceling, right? And I don't know how many times I've spoken to drivers that they have canceled for unaccompanied minor, or they have canceled for child without a car seat,
Yep.
or they're not feeling safe, which are all good points, by the way. And that still counts towards the cancellation rate. And on the back end of these companies, right? They want to have.
Oh, that was weird. What about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, your microphone cut out for a sec.
Did it? Okay. But we'll take that out. All right.
Start
So
that rant. Start that rant one more time.
okay. So I cannot stand these TNCs, TNCs
Hmm.
meaning Uber and Lyft
Yeah.
specifically, having the cake and eating it too. I am canceling according to your own terms of service. I should not be penalized, get nasty emails, or even put timeout. If I click one of those choices, I don't
Hmm.
feel safe. Look, I had a crackhead that was cussing me out. You think I'm going to let that idiot get in my car? Before she got in my car, she was cussing me out. I'm like, no, cancel. And that puts me over 6%. In this gentleman's case, he's in a blizzard. He can't get to it. And certain times, stadiums, pickups, concerts, we can't get to the passenger. Of course, I'm going to cancel. What am I going to do? Drive for 40 minutes for $3? No. So all I'm saying is these companies need to treat their drivers a little bit differently when we do cancel according to their rules. We're playing by
Right.
their
But what
rules.
I'm saying is that Uber and Lyft build that into the system, right? There's a 5% cancellation threshold
Broken
for a
system.
reason, right? Like you think, how many blizzards have there been in the past 10 years on Lyft and Uber? I mean, I would be like, I would be shocked if they haven't realized, like, oh my gosh, there's a higher cancellation rate when it's inclement weather, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure that they build that into the system. And I think where I would agree with you is that they need to be way more transparent with the cancellation thresholds. Hey, I tell drivers, like, okay, when there's a blizzard, we actually increase our cancellation threshold to 10%, right? Or, maybe they don't want to advertise that because then drivers take advantage of it, but, kind of communicate it with support. So it's definitely not an easy problem, but I don't know. I guess I don't really buy this guy's story, right?
Okay.
I don't buy this guy's story that, oh, I'm just canceling a ride here and there, right? Like I don't think that adds up. I don't think that makes
Well,
sense.
no,
So to
but
me, that's the
I do. It's not about buying this guy's story. This is a general
well, so
story
okay, let's
that
say you're driving in a blizzard. Like what's an acceptable cancellation rate then?
I don't know. But what I'm saying is that if at some point these companies have to trust the driver, and if the gentleman is saying, look, he canceled due to safety reason, right? Under safety, Lyft systems are probably looking at it and okay, they're dealing with an unruly passenger, they're in a bad part of town, something is
Right. And
happening.
they allow you to do that. They just don't allow you to do that on 100 out of 100 rides, right? If you can't,
Oh,
if you got
absolutely.
100
But
rides and canceled 100, would that be okay with you?
no, absolutely not.
Okay. So no.
But
So what about 50? What if you cancel 50 out
no,
of 100 rides for safety issues?
okay,
So like,
you
where's the
actually,
threshold for you? That's my point. There's got to be some threshold somewhere,
well,
right?
the problem is that, Harry, the threshold is never transparently announced to the
Okay.
driver
That I agree with you. That
because
is
well, what is the threshold? When am I going to get this email that ruined the rest of my
well,
day?
do you
Right?
think
And
this
I'm
driver
like,
just got
no.
one email out of the blue and like you're in timeout, or do you think they got an email warning you, right? So I think that like the way that, I'm sure if you reached out to Uber and Lyft, I'm sure they would say, oh, we send out a warning email and then another warning email. And do they actually always do that? No, right? But I
Well,
think if they
Lyft
have,
does it more than Uber.
right. And so
Uber actually, I got to give Uber credit. Uber doesn't do this. Uber doesn't send you, look, I have an 11% cancellation rate. Before, by the way,
Mhm.
they had the accidental discharge screens. On the pink screen, you can click anywhere.
Yeah.
I'll be like on YouTube or something, and I'll click it by mistake. I accepted. Lyft never had that because they had the accept screen on the bottom, and Uber went with that. Uber, I have never received any emails from Uber saying that, oh, by the way, we could deactivate you if, and you know what they do, Harry, that
Really,
pisses me off the
I
most?
think the warning emails are helpful. I mean, I
Well,
want to be
I
warned
get
because
it,
if
but
you're
look
a
at the wording.
driver and you understand that, hey, I'm starting to be warned for Lyft. Like, I don't know. I guess like, okay, so there's definitely some blame for Lyft in this situation, right? But if I'm a savvy driver, like
Yeah,
I'm not gonna blame Lyft for this, right? It's like this is a me problem, right? Hey, there's another company called Uber. Maybe on a blizzard, you should drive for both Lyft and Uber, right? So
I
that if
have
you
that.
are
I
having to
get that,
cancel
but
rides,
that's not
right?
the issue here. That's not the issue. The issue here is this: when the email shows up in your box right after you hit the 5% threshold, which is not announced anywhere on their app, but it is 5% because it's in your app as well. But that's not the issue. The issue is here: this when you accuse me of bad service for cancellation, I'm not trying to give bad service, okay? And it says clearly in the email, your passengers are complaining that you're not giving them good service. They're saying you're canceling too often and you're not driving towards the passenger. That's exactly what the email says. I'm like, none of those are true. It's all I'm doing is I'm doing my best to get to my passenger. And if for some reason I
Well, I guess
cancel,
Sergio, your best isn't good enough in this situation because I know that if I was a passenger, I'd be pretty pissed, right? I mean, imagine you're running your own business, right? And you're getting a request from a, like you said, hey, you're an actual independent contractor and business owner, right? And you cancel on that customer. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to go to Yelp. They're going to leave you a 1 star, right? They're not going to be very happy. They don't care why you couldn't make it or, right? That's sort of what they're relying on. So I don't know. I
I
don't think
get
we're
it.
going to agree on this one, but you have any final, I'll give you 30, what's your final word on this?
My final word is don't try to have the cake and eat it too. And do understand why drivers are canceling. Yes, I do get the bad apples exist. Those should not, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's what
All
I'm
right.
saying.
I guess
And things need to change. Things need to
my
change
final
when it
thought
comes to
is,
this.
if you're a driver, don't cancel rides and you won't be suspended. So seems pretty simple to me.
Okay. I
Let the passenger cancel. Switch to Uber and, just leave Lyft open until the passenger cancels, right? There are a lot of other ways you can handle it.
take the advice,
So
people. Don't cancel trips. Let the crackheads in the car.
let
No,
the crackheads in the car. All right.
it's not gonna
Put that
happen.
on a t-shirt. All right.
Yeah,
Next
that should be the
topic.
headline. Let the crackheads in the car. Like, no. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, this is going to be a hot one. So I don't know. I don't think we're gonna, we have to agree to disagree on a lot of these things because
We'll find
I,
one topic where we agree on before the show's out.
we may find
Maybe
one
not.
next month.
Maybe next
Not
month.
not today. All right, so let's go with earnings. Is earnings like earnings has been the top? I've been with you for 6 years. You've done it for 10 years almost now. Earnings has been in the top of the complaint list of the driver community. Agree? Like, can we
Yeah.
agree on that? We can
Yeah,
agree
that I
on that.
agree.
Yeah.
Number one complaint
Yeah, number one complaint.
for
And
10
I'm not
years.
making enough money. 10 years ago, people were saying I'm not making enough money. And today that they're definitely saying I'm not making enough money. So let's go with that. Do you think the expectation of the driver community is too high for what the job entails
Well, I mean,
as far as earnings are concerned?
I mean, I think that, like you said, right, the number one complaint for 10 years for Uber and Lyft drivers has been that I'm not being paid enough. I want to
Yeah,
make more money. I don't think that's exclusive to gig economy, though. Everyone, literally at every job, I think, wants more money, wants to be paid more. And especially, when you're in more service, right, hotel, restaurant, fast food, right, like those jobs are traditionally lower paid, right? So then, like working at Google or Amazon, right? And maybe at Google and Amazon, they still care about money and they want to make a lot, but maybe that's not everyone's number one concern. So I think that,
yeah,
this isn't like it shouldn't be a shock that everyone wants to make more money. And I guess as far as their expectations, I mean, like, I guess yeah, I think the expectations are too high. I mean, honestly, like
okay.
one of the best things about driving for Uber and Lyft is that anyone and everyone can do it, right? But like, what do we always say? Like, we joke that, hey, all you have to do is have a car. I mean, you don't even need a car. You can rent a car, right? You don't even need a car. You just have to
Yes.
pass a background check and then have a pulse, and you can drive for Uber and Lyft, right? So that's
Yeah.
really all that's needed, which is great. If you've just been laid off, if you need temporary work, if you need a flexible schedule, right? All the things we like about driving for Uber and Lyft, right? That's why it's so attractive to people signing up. But it also means that like a lot of people want to do it, right?
Yeah.
Dara just said on a podcast, 6.5 million Uber drivers around the globe. So yeah, I mean, if a lot of people want to do a job and I'm Uber, right, then why would I pay more than I need to? Like this shouldn't be a surprise, right? Like, hey, yeah, we all want to make more money, but Uber's going to pay as little as they can to get the job done and, have drivers do it in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the pay today, as a driver of 8 years, and I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to pay, and right now we're in the ugly period.
Yeah.
I don't think the pay is commensurate to the risks that we're taking. Okay. Now, I'm not comparing myself to a unionized UPS driver here. All right. That's a different story altogether. However, the job that I'm doing, picking up people, dropping people off, driving drunk hours, look, first of all, driving has its inherent risks in its own. And as a
Hmm.
as a full-time driver, putting in 6,000 miles a month, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when I'm gonna get in a fender bender or a crash. Okay.
Yeah.
And the risks it does not equalize the pay today. Yeah, it may have done it during the pandemic. It may have done it 5 years ago, 8 years ago, when bonuses and everything else
Well,
was
I
going
think
through
it
the roof.
definitely did it
But
during the
I
pandemic. Weren't you
just
earning
cannot
50,
see
60
myself
bucks an
driving.
hour?
Yeah, I cannot see myself driving for $22 an hour. And I collect all this data. I put it up on Twitter actually yesterday, and our community sent me out of plus 60 plus cities now. And the trend is, and I started doing it in November, Harry. You should see the trend. The trend
Yeah.
is 20, 30% lower in every city as far as median earnings, as online earnings are concerned, and they're going down. And I get it. There's seasonality. I get that. January is probably slow. But the point I'm trying to make is I don't think, earnings need to be cut to the level that they need to cut just because we're down. The driver community is down. Let's kick him in the ass some more now. Let's have him do $2.76 trips. I
Yeah.
can't take a human being in my car, pick somebody up and drop somebody off in LA for $2.76. I can even buy a pack of gum for $2.76. So
Well, you mentioned a couple important things. Right now, we are in a lower pay period, right? There are more drivers than ever. I mean, so it's like, yeah, this is obviously if there's more drivers than ever, pay, there's going to be less rides, pay is going to go down, right? So I think just in a time period of rideshare, right? Like during the pandemic, no rides. Then as things were picking back up, they didn't have enough drivers. So you were out there making 50 to $60 an hour in Los Angeles, right? So, it's cyclical, right? Like a pay goes up and down, I guess you would say, right? And like we are definitely in a lower pay period right now. We're going into quarter one, January, February, March, which is also like seasonally a low period. So I agree that it's not a great time for pay. But I think that like if you understand like, hey, there are a lot of drivers out there who want to do this job. If you can do 40 hours a week at Uber or 40 hours a week at McDonald's, what would you pick? Making this
yeah,
about the same amount of
okay,
money. If you can make about the same amount of money, right? Like Uber is a no-brainer, right? You get paid instantly, you have a flexible schedule, right? As long as the pay is about the same. What if it's 15% less than working at McDonald's? I mean, I think a lot of people might even still choose Uber, right? So I'm not saying that it's right or it's a good thing, but I'm trying to help drivers understand why the situation is that it is. And like, hey,
well,
did you
that's a
work
given.
your
That's a
ass
given.
off? Do you
That's a
work your
given.
ass
But
off when times are good, right? Like, because, during the pandemic, when you could make 50, 60, 70 an hour, right, driving in LA in a top market, did you really like put money away for a rainy day, like this period that came, right? And I bet a lot of drivers didn't. And so, again, right, like, I think that I guess I don't like always blaming. I never like blaming other people for my problems, right? It's like, hey, this is a
Well,
me
just like
problem. I'm going
Travis
to
said,
figure out
right?
this
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, just like the viral video with Travis years ago when he was in a car of the driver saying, "I bought this car," and
Well,
look,
yeah, yeah,
I think when somebody goes out, first of all, expectations are always going to be there for whatever job you're doing. Okay, if you're doing a good job, you expect to get paid a fair value for in exchange of your labor. I mean,
yeah,
look, we're running our cars, our costs are through the roof. Over the last 3 4 years due to inflation. At the same time, due to inflation, inflation is a tailwind for Uber because they were able to charge a lot more. All
yeah,
I'm saying is that I don't think they're sharing the wealth with the driver commensurate to what they're charging the passenger these days.
yeah,
I mean, for the last 4 or 5 years, if Uber is charging 40 to 50% more on the same trip, I don't think they're sharing the wealth. And my costs as a driver have also gone through the roof as much
yeah,
as Uber complains about, oh, our commercial rates are up. Well, I get that. But what about my costs? Nobody cares because you're running a zero asset business model, which is you don't own shit. You don't own the car. You don't even own your
yeah.
service, probably. So I'm saying that I think at the moment, the balance of pay versus what the job is really, really not attractive, especially in bigger cities where inflation and cost of living is going through the roof for the driver community.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what's the solution then? I mean, I've always liked the minimum wage, right? Like in New York City, in the state
Yeah.
of Washington, there's a minimum wage. So it's that floor, right? But I think that drivers like always kind of want the best of both worlds, right? It's like, oh my gosh, there's a minimum wage now in New York City, but now I have to schedule shifts ahead of time. Like, yeah, no shit. Uber can't have you driving out in the middle of nowhere if they have to pay you a
Yes.
guaranteed minimum wage,
Well,
right? So you have to be ready to give up some flexibility. New York City is a good example. Drivers are making more now with that minimum wage. So I'm okay with a floor, right? Like, because I do think,
exactly.
drivers come in, maybe Uber sets expectations too high. Drivers don't realize they have all these expenses on their vehicles. So I'm okay with a minimum wage kind of for a lot of the reasons like yeah like a $2 3 fare like obviously if I get that I'm not going to take it I would Uber tells you how much it is right so don't take those fares but it is a slap in the face it's a
Well,
lot
but
demeaning
here's
right
my problem. Here's my problem with all this. Okay, so I get it. I'm a cherry picker. I've always been a cherry picker. Except that what I'm figuring out now is this. I'm caught between a hard place and a rock. If I don't take that $2 and $3 trip, my utilization rate is collapsing. If
hmm
I do take the $2 and $3 trip, my hourly earnings are in the trash can. So I'm really caught as a driver. And first of all, in 2024, the same rate that I was receiving on a minimum fare trip is the same as 2015. That's just got to change. I mean, if Uber and Lyft are going to do anything about earnings, min fare has to be at least $5 in every city because those are the trips they're making the most amount of money. Their take
yeah
rate is the highest. I mean, look, they're charging $8, paying me 250. Bro, no, I can't transport a
but
human being for $2.50. And
but I mean obviously people are doing it otherwise Uber
yes,
wouldn't keep
unfortunately,
sending those
desperados are
offers right
doing it.
so I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where like I get so I think we agree right like Uber and Lyft definitely should pay more. They should have a higher minimum fare. They should have a minimum wage. But if people are going to keep taking these trips, I wouldn't expect that to change anytime
That
soon. So
is
if
the
I'm an
problem.
individual driver, the decision that I need to make is like, hey, how am I doing? Right? Like, what's the average driver in my city making? Like, first of all, if you're the average driver, like you should definitely be making more than the average driver with all the information that you give out, that we give out on the channel. Like, there's no way you should be an average driver. It is not hard to be above average, when it comes to earnings. When you drive for
Yeah.
Uber and Lyft, you put a little to a medium amount of effort and you should be above average. So if you're the type of driver who's like already out there, you're doing your research, you're putting time in, you're kind of, above average driver, you're driving for both Uber, you're driving for Lyft, you sort of understand, hey, maybe there are times where I want to think about delivery or think about trying other services or, whatever. Like if you're kind of out there doing all those things, I still think that you can have, kind of a lot of success in the gig economy. But I feel like most people are just not doing any of that. They're like, oh, I just want to sit here
Well,
and, take trips that Uber and Lyft send me. And,
Well, I did that. I did that test this weekend, and then took 20 trips in a row, and my numbers were nothing special to write home about. I mean, I was at 21 and a half per online hour before expenses. If I took that out, I'm down to 16 and a half, 17, which is minimum wage in LA.
Yep. So
The
I
risks
mean,
I'm
basically,
taking,
you made minimum wage driving in Los Angeles, right? And so I guess like, yeah, the risk for you personally, right? You feel like the risk you're taking is not worth it, right?
no,
That you should be making more money, right? Like every person is different, right? And so I think that like if everyone has all the information and all the data, like make an informed decision at that point.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to do. But one last thing about this pay structure that they have instituted under
Yeah,
upfront
what's your
pay.
final word?
My final word is upfront fares needs to have a massive, massive overhaul because drivers are driving for less. There is no question about it. The rebalancing, consistency of earnings, whatever we were sold in, let's say, last quarter of 2022, that is not factual. Long trips are paying less. Short trips are paying less. I mean, we had
Yeah.
this for a year and a half now, and
Well,
I am definitely making less money with upfront fares. There is no ifs and buts in
that's
my
not even
mind.
what we're debating right now, but
No,
okay.
I know, but what I'm saying is that I'm making less money because of upfront fares. And making less money is the topic. I am making less money. And even if I were to be above average, look, I cannot
All
work
right.
for minimum wage and take the risk I'm taking driving for 11, 12 hours a day. It just
I
doesn't
guess
work.
to me, the topic is, are driver expectations too high on pay and earnings? And I would say yes. There's a lot of people out there right now that need to work and need to drive and need to make money, and you're competing with those. So if you're doing
What
the
do you
same
think? Okay,
things,
what do you think? Look, if you're saying it's too high, what do you think this job should pay per hour? Maybe we shouldn't even look at it per hour, but let's say, what can we compare this to, Harry? And not a UPS driver, not a FedEx driver, medical courier job. What should we compare rideshare driving to? We have to have some sort of comparison.
I mean, what should any job pay? I don't know. I don't know what it should pay. I mean, probably, I don't know. I mean, it should pay whatever, if I'm the
The
company, it should
market
pay
demands.
whatever the
Okay.
market, is willing to pay, right? Like if they don't
Yeah.
have any drivers, they got to pay more. And if they have a lot of drivers, pay less, right? Like I think that's kind of obvious, right? Like you know, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
All right, we'll
So
see what people say about this. They're
we'll see
probably
what
not going
people
to
say.
like
No,
what I
I
had to
think
say, but
yeah, I think a lot of people say I'm not getting paid enough. But let's go to another topic. Okay.
all right.
Should the drivers care about the take rate? Take rate is I think it may have surpassed the earnings debate here. Okay.
All
Because
right.
people go, oh, Uber charge 50, pay me 25. They have 50%. They take 60%. We ran a survey. 62% on Lyft, 61% on Uber said Uber and Lyft takes 50 to 75% of the fare. Now, it may be right, it may be wrong. In one trip, it may be right, but should the driver care about what Uber makes at all?
Well, so I mean, it not maybe right, maybe wrong. It is wrong, right? Like I think that the perception of the take rate is obviously high, right? Like we just surveyed thousands of drivers, we get tons of emails, right? Like, oh yeah, everyone thinks to take 50, 60, 70, 80%. And then when I tell them to send me their weekly statement, that shows the actual commission or, tell me what the passenger paid, what Uber kept and what you kept, it's never 50, 60, 70, 80% over a week, over a month. It's always 20 to 30% or somewhere in that ballpark. So if anyone has any different, you can always email me or Sergio with your weekly, monthly summary. But I guarantee, or not guarantee, but I'm pretty damn sure no one ever follows through, right? But I get it, right? Because there are rides where they take a very high percentage, and I guess like yeah, it doesn't feel great, it isn't good, but like again, they give you the upfront fare, right? So do I want this trip or do I not want this trip, right? Like, I guess to me, if it's not a good trip, don't take it, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
but
know.
that's not the issue we're discussing. If I did that many times, in real life driving, and I cannot be caught between hard place and a rock. If I don't take the trip, 60% utilization, then I'm sitting in my car twiddling my fingers. If there's no cherries to pick, you can't pick cherries. But the topic is here. First of all, we may agree on this maybe towards the end. The topic is why is the perception out there that 50 to 75% of the people think Uber takes 50 to 75% of the fare? I know it's not true. Look, I drove this weekend. Uber tells me personally on Monday, this is your service fee, Serge. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay. So according to Uber, it was 2%. Two, one, two. I put that up on Show Me the Money this week. But when you look at the line items that they put up there, commercial insurance, all the
Yeah.
pass-throughs, blah, 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 right? It's 40%. Which is it,
Yeah.
2% or 40%? And I
All right.
think I used to look, I used to think it's 2%. I don't anymore. Now I'm looking at it as simple as every other driver out there. Passenger paid 100, you gave me 50, you kept 50%. What you do with
Very
your
simple.
shit?
That's
It's not
all.
my concern.
That's all it
That's
is, right?
because
So
I have my expenses
if
as well.
passengers paid 100, you're saying Uber, or Uber kept 40, you kept 60, so 40%. So that's, I mean, that's on the. I think that's reasonable, or not reasonable, but I think that adds up to me, right? Like
Yeah.
I haven't seen any screenshots where someone sent me their weekly statement and passengers paid 1,000 in total, Uber kept 600, and they only kept 400. I've never seen that before, right? And if
Yeah.
there is one like that from recent time, send it to us. We'll take a look. We'll share it,
Yeah.
right? But usually, yeah, it's 200, 300, 400, right? Is what they're keeping. And I agree with you. I don't count any the commercial insurance, all that crap. Like that's on Uber. They need to figure all that out, right? It's like they're keeping that, I'm keeping my money, and then the passengers. But there's only three numbers that matter, right? Passenger, what passenger paid, what you kept, and what Uber kept. And so, I mean, I think that, like, again, right, like, obviously, I want that number to be as low as possible as a driver, but, Uber is going to do what they're going to do, right? If they have, if they're charging 400 out of 1,000, like, what do you do? You know what I mean? Like, well, I don't know
Yeah. And
why that matters so much.
I honestly think, at some point, the driver community has to kind of shy away from that. But I do get their point of view though, because they're going like, it's my car, it's my expenses. My insurance rates are going up every time I change tires. It's through the roof now, last 3 years. Oil changes are through the roof. They're going, my costs are going up as well. So Uber shouldn't be crying over there in a $130 billion market cap company saying, oh, my rates are going up. Oh, boo hoo
Yeah.
hoo. I'm like, I
Well,
don't
that I
even know
agree
why
with.
they
I
do
mean,
that.
Uber loves to blame insurance and lawyers and all that, but like they've never done anything to incentivize safe drivers. They never said, "Hey, Sergio, you're one of our top 5% safest drivers. We're going to pay you more. We're going to give you more rides," right? So they could easily be doing way more things, right, to incentivize drivers to drive safe and then have less accidents and then pay less in insurance. So, again, like I'm not defending Uber, but I'm not blaming them either, but I think that like the take rate to drivers isn't that high, right? So I guess I guess my argument, like the take rate isn't 60, 70%, even though drivers think that. I know why they think that, right? There's certain trips where, obviously Uber has a very high take rate and it doesn't feel great, but that's not what the take rate is. So I don't think it really should matter. Maybe, I think this would be a different discussion if the actual take rate that Uber was 50, 60, 70%, then that would be a different discussion. If it's 20, 30, 40%, I mean, I don't know. It's not ideal, but seems reasonable.
Do you think maybe we'll agree on this one? Do you think the perception is reality though, right? And they do a horrible job communicating to the driver community that, well, that's not our take rate, but the driver is,
Yeah.
look, we're
So
as drivers,
that's
we're
something we
simple
definitely
people.
agree on. I do
We're
agree.
simple people.
Perception, yeah,
We're simple
perception
people.
is right. I mean, perception is reality, right? If drivers think the take rate is really high, like I think that's actually worse, right? Because now, not literally the take rate is lower. Everybody thinks it's higher. And so now drivers are probably saying like, oh, screw this company, or, oh, I'm going to quit driving for them, right? Because they take so much out of every fare, right? So Uber and Lyft, I think, are really shooting themselves in the foot. I think you're right. It might be like the number one, issue, because pay has always been like the biggest complaint for the past 10 years. It's like always there. It's not going anywhere. And, right now, like it's not a great time, but with take rate, I think that this is one where like they could actually do something. They could actually fix this now if they
Yeah,
wanted to.
but one last thing is that as far as this take rate is concerned, right? It, I believe the take rates have gone up, not to the
Yeah.
point of 50 to 75%, because look, it's a simple thing. It has to go up for them to turn a profit. If you look at Uber's free cash flow, it's going through the roof now. Well, that's because they're charging as much and paying as little as possible. That's the simple business model. But I think the communication failure that is so obvious here that, but I was looking at my statement this weekend. I really was. And I was like, okay, which one is it, Uber? Is it
Yeah.
2%, like you're saying? Or is it 40%? Which is it? I'm not even sure. And to me, I should care about, the headline of this debate or the question was, should drivers care? I do care
Yeah.
because I think ultimately, you can make a comparison saying, does a McDonald's worker care about what the franchise owner is making or whatever? No, that's not the same issue. I think
Yeah.
I do care because I have so much of the cost on me. So if Uber as a $130 billion company going to complain about their costs, well, I should complain about my costs because they're gone through the roof with inflation. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I think that it definitely the take rate. I mean, I guess yeah, you're right. It should matter to drivers, right? Because hey, if it's they feel that it's too high or the perception is too high, complain about it, say something about it, we'll cover it. And, who knows, maybe the companies will figure something out to change this in the future.
Yeah, we have been, and actually, hopefully that line item on my weekly statement has a breakdown now. Okay, 80 out of, okay, I paid $122 this weekend. Uber says
Yeah.
it's all commercial insurance. I'm like, I only did 20 trips. I only drove 150 miles. How could Uber at their scale only have, pay 80 cents a mile for commercial insurance? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
don't know if
thinking,
that adds up.
break that down, explain it to the community. Okay, this was the marketplace fee, this was that. But they just kind of go up all in one bucket. Our rates are up. Don't worry about it. I'm like, no, I do worry about it, but that's where
Yeah.
we're at.
All right. Well, we sort of agreed on that one, I think.
I think so, yeah. And yeah,
All right.
maybe that will not do well. But look, okay, so I don't know. I think this is going to be a success. I really do. And I was thinking for the future. There are a lot of people who probably want to debate me or you. Once in
Yeah.
a while, we probably should put one of us against,
Yeah. No, I like
a
that idea.
naysayer. I think involving the community will be great in this
Yeah, we'll definitely get the community involved, and if people want to submit a topic for
topic
future
for sure.
debate, we'll leave a link to the Google form. And otherwise, see everyone next time.
All right. All right.